What's up, guys? Thank you so much for being here. So today I wanted to show you my new Trijicon Credo. It's a 1:6 power scope, and I've got this Daniel Defense 30mm mount for it. And I used to have, if you've seen my videos before, I had a Trijicon 1:4 power with an American Defense quick detach mount. And I'll make a whole separate video as to why I decided to switch things up a little. Some people might think that this mount's not as good or whatever, but like I said, I'll explain why I did that. But for this video, I just wanted to show you guys how to actually mount the scope to the rifle, because I know from experience, if it's your first time ever doing it, it can be a little bit frustrating if you don't quite know what to do to make it easier or what tools to use. So I'm going to give you guys a couple of options of different ways and different tools that I've used that just make it super easy. Okay, so we've got our scope, we've got our mount. That's what the mount looks like. I think it's pretty cool looking with the little ridges on top. It kind of cut out weight, but also looks cool. And it's nice because this particular mount, it says the torque inch-pounds for what you're supposed to use for the rings, but also for the torque base. Obviously, I'm going to read the manual for the scope, because that's something that you always want to do, is make sure that you've got the right, you don't want to damage your scope because that's super valuable. So you want to make sure, regardless of what the mount says or what anything else says, you want to make sure you don't go tighter than the mount specs say, or the scope specs say. There's a couple different tools you can use for making sure that the scope is level with the rifle, which is the part that gets kind of frustrating sometimes, because as you're tightening it, there's things that can make it turn a little bit, and if it's off even a little, then if you're trying to use your BDC reticle or any kind of holdovers and you're shooting, more than 100 yards, it's really going to be way off if your scope isn't level with your rifle. So there's a couple different tools. We've got these actual bubble levels. You can see right there a couple of little bubble levels, which they work really good, but it can still be difficult to keep it level as you're tightening things down. I decided to pick up one of these for this time, because last time I just used this and it worked fine. And if you really just want to save some money, you can just pick up some of the bubble levels and that's it. But this, I think, is going to make it even a little easier. And it's a little small leveling kit. They go for different prices on Amazon. You can find some pretty cheap ones. I think this one was around 20 bucks or 18 something. You'll see how it works once I start using it. But basically, it's got a couple of metal pieces that you balance on the mount, and then as you place the scope in there, it basically forces it to stay level because of this flat surface that's on the bottom of the scope. Pretty much any modern scope will have this flat surface right here. So that's that. Let's go ahead and get started. I'm gonna switch this rifle around so that I can work on it. I just went ahead and torqued the base on there. So one of the keys when you're putting the base on there is you want to make sure that you rock the base all the way forward. So whatever slot you put it into on your rail, because obviously you've got this rail right here, so you slot it in where you want it. And so I put the scope on there loosely. As you can hear, the scope rings are still loose. And so I just put it in there loosely so that I can put the scope where I wanted. And I pretty much wanted it basically lined up with the back of the charging handle, because that just lines up well for me. And so you can set it up however you want, but then once you do, then make sure that the mount is pushed all the way forward into that slot, because even if it's made for a Picatinny rail like this, there's still going to be a little bit of wiggle typically. And when you go to shoot your gun, say you spend all the time zeroing it, then you go to shoot your gun and you shoot it several times, the gun, the momentum sends it backwards, and it's gonna, if there's any wiggle room forward, it's gonna send your mount forward a little bit. And that could slightly throw off your zero, especially at longer distances. So just make sure that you push it as far forward as you can. So once you've got it set up in the spot that you want, and you've pushed it forward into the rail, then you want to torque down those two screws on your base, or however your scope mount works. You just want to tighten that down to the specs that it says. So it said for the base, it's got it marked on the mount itself for 60 inch-pounds. So I went ahead and used my fat wrench, which looks like the max on it is about 60 or 65 inch-pounds, and so I just set it to 60 and I tightened that down all the way. And so the mount's on there, it's not going anywhere. So now it's a matter of getting this thing level, because as you can see, it can just kind of turn and it's not going to be level whatsoever. Got it lined up where I want it. So let's try using this tool that I bought. First off, you have this, you got these pieces, and one of them, which is this one, as you can see, it'll focus for you. It kind of has a little hook, a little lip there. So that kind of sets in there and keeps it from sliding off. Right below the knob, we've got our little metal piece that's just kind of hooked on there. And then that metal piece has a groove that this tool slides into. So I'm going to use the small triangle because it comes with two, but this one I wanted to get a mount that keeps the scope lower to the rifle, and so I'm going to use the smaller triangle. And all these typically have like a little white square in the corner. I don't know if you can see it right there, but it basically tells you that that side goes upward, so that way you don't have it backwards. Slide that into that groove. So I'll show you what we're looking at so far, just so you can see. Right here you can see that part is pushed in, and when you push it in, it levels out the bottom of this and keeps it from turning in either direction. And then when you're done screwing everything down, as you're getting closer to being done, you can pull this out. So next I've got these bubble levels that I showed you guys earlier. And so I'll put one on the top of this cap of the scope itself, and then one I'll hold on. You can place it, but it doesn't look like there's much space on this guy, so I'm just gonna hold it. And then you just look at the two bubbles and see if they line up. They look like they're pretty lined up to me. So what that means is that that little metal tool is a lifesaver and makes this super easy. The fact that these bubbles are pretty much already lining up, that's about as close as I can get it anyways. So yeah, if I was you, I would get the little metal tool instead of these bubble levels, 'cause unless you want to do both like I did just to confirm, but that tool just made it so easy. I just pushed it underneath the flat spot of the scope and between that and the mount, and it just basically leveled it out for me. So I'm gonna start tightening these down. Obviously when you tighten it down, some scope mounts, you're gonna end up with a little bit of space. Let me see if I can show you. But you're gonna end up with a little bit of space right here where the mount tightens down. So it's gonna squeeze onto your scope and you're gonna end up with a little bit of gap there. You just wanna make sure that the gap is the same on both sides. So when you tighten down, just tighten little by little, going like, across from each other like this. Just make sure that you really keep the gap on both sides the same size to keep it from shifting one direction or the other. So I tried to look in the Trijicon scope manual for like how many inch-pounds to torque it down to, but all it said is to not exceed what it says for your mount. And my mount says 30 inch-pounds. So I'm gonna go ahead and do it to like 30 inch-pounds. That seems pretty tight to me because every mount I've had before is like maybe 20 inch-pounds. So I might even set it just under 30, maybe 27 or something. All right, so that didn't take very long and it's all set. So I did skip a little bit there because I was struggling slightly with the fact that I realized when I was putting that little tool underneath there, although it makes the whole thing 10 times easier because you just shove it in there and it's flat with that surface, so it straightens out your scope. But the problem is you can't shove it in too much or else it pushes up on your scope, and then when you go to tighten down the screws, then that thing is stuck in there, and if you take it out, then it's probably not as tight as it needs to be, or there's some room for maybe some movement in the future once you start shooting. I didn't tighten it too far down because I realized that right away that if I tighten it down, it's gonna make it too snug. So I basically just tightened it down pretty, sort of tight to where it wasn't moving. I pulled that little tool out and then I just held it in place with my hand kind of like this as I kind of tightened down the different screws. And so that seemed to really work. It still made the job 10 times easier than just using the bubble level. And then afterwards I used the bubble level just to make sure that it was done, and it was like level with my rifle once I was done with the whole thing. And it turned out great. So obviously I still have to go to the range and zero the rifle with the scope, but at least it's mounted on there and I know that it's level and that it's good to go. So when I zero it, it'll be all set and I can use that BDC the way I'm supposed to. If you guys liked any of the tools that I showed, whether it was the fat wrench or the little leveling tool that goes underneath or the bubble levels or all of it, I'll go ahead and put links in the description down below. That way all you have to do is go ahead and click on any of those links for the item that you're interested in, and it'll take you straight to Amazon where you can purchase it. And it really helps out my channel because I get a small percentage from Amazon at no cost to you, so I would really appreciate that. And thanks again for watching. And if you're not subscribed and you like gun content or backpack reviews or just gear reviews, then definitely go ahead and hit the subscribe button because I'm going to be putting out a lot more videos in the future. And don't forget to hit the like button. It's like a super small, simple thing that you can do that really helps out my channel. So thanks again for doing that. And I'll catch you guys in the next video.